Hey, Ronnie Jr.
I really want to camp on this for a minute, because it's one reason I really wanted to be on your podcast um, is to talk about the authenticity of today's reality stars and how much that's changed and different from who I am. And I think there's this pressure. Let me just say this. I know that there's this pressure when a camera is pointed at you to produce. I mean, if you look on social media and you see all of these spoilers and stalkers and big super fans, it's okay. Here's the show, and I hope that this person produces because I'm going to stand them. And it's like, I mean, do you really want them to produce inauthentic content for your entertainment, or are you looking for a reality show and a reality personality participant that is real, true blue, genuine? Because I try to be true blue, genuine in real life, and so when I get on a reality show, whether it's an original series or whether it's a homecoming reunion, I'm gonna be a true I'm gonna be a true dude. You meet me on the street, I'm gonna be the same person that you see on the Real World Homecoming.
Hmm.
And people say that all the time to all reality stars and really all people on TV. Hey, I feel like I know you. Well, when you look at John Brennan, you really do know me. Like I'm going to be this person. I'm the same person that I was in 1993 on the Real World that I am on Homecoming, and the same person that you'll meet on the street any day of the week. I don't say that about all of my roommates, and I sure don't say that about the newer reality stars. I mean, I'm just going
Yeah.
to, since I'm the only guest and no one besides you can interrupt me, I'm just going to say it plainly, okay? These new reality stars are posers. All right. They are posers and they're riding on the coattails of people like me, the real OGs. And I know Mark Long has the OG All Stars, but I'll take it a step. And Mark's a very good friend of mine. I love him dearly. But you need to take the OGs a step back further because the OGs that are on the All Stars are just, oh, they're not OGs. If you want OGs, you better look at Eric Nies. You better look at John Brennan. You better go back to the very first challenge that ever existed, which was called the Road Rules All Stars, and look at Eric, John, Rachel, Sean, and Cynthia. I mean, we started the challenge. It wasn't Johnny Bananas. It wasn't all of these people that are on there season after season after season after season until they win. And I love all those guys. I love very few of those people, but but I'm just telling you, they're not OGs. They're not OGs. Mark Long, you're an OG because you were on the first Road Rules ever. And when they kicked Puck out of the house, I think that he was one of the candidates to be on the San Francisco show. I've even heard stories of a podcast he did recently where he was even being considered to live in our house as a second Real World, which would have been awesome because I get along with Mark and I think he's a totally great dude.
Hmm.
But Mark Long, if you're listening to my podcast here, 44 minutes into this podcast, you don't have an OG challenge because you don't have me. And other than
Wait, so
Norman,
you want to go back?
are you kidding me? Listen, I started Road Rules because I was on the Winnebago with Tami and Dominic. Okay. I started the challenge because I was on the very first challenge ever with Eric and Rachel and Sean and Cynthia. Okay. And I started the Real World too because I was on season 2 of the Real World and season 1 completely sucked. So there's your soundbite. Okay. They have called me 3 times for the All Stars challenge and haven't cast me yet. And I always tell them I'm available and willing and ready to go. But
Next
now
time
look at now.
next time, just tell him you're busy with Garth Brooks or something. Something about
Well,
not being available is like the
here's
easiest way to get casted. It seems like. Oh,
but listen, I'm telling you, I just think that nowadays when you put a camera on anybody, there's this pressure to produce. You got people that are bullying you online. Oh, don't you dare go on there and be boring. I mean, I got called boring on our homecoming. Oh, Tami carried the homecoming.
hmm.
I don't think Tami carried the homecoming. I think she dominated it. And I don't.
I do love Tami though. So I'm gonna give
I know. I can tell.
I just because I've seen so many of her shows, but that
Well,
doesn't mean everyone has their different position. And what you're
yeah.
basically saying is the concept is each person has to have their integrity with how they're going to run the situation. Are you going to turn it on for cameras? Are you going to keep it low key? John, I
No,
even deal
no.
with that.
Listen,
Go ahead.
I need to tell you something. because my good friend Mike Lewis, who I'm sure is watching, he did a podcast with you, right? And so there's this little 10-second window of time where you say to Mike, "Now it just seemed like John on the homecoming really held back and he wasn't his true self." And I thought, you know what I told Mike? Here's what I told Mike. I said, "Do you know that dude? Can you get in touch with him?" He said, yeah, I can. And so, because I've become good friends with Mike, he's a cool kid.
Oh, good.
And he said, "Yeah, I can get in touch with him." I said, "Tell him I want to be on his podcast because I want to clear this up."
Okay, set it straight. Go.
Well, I want to say here. This is as honest as I can be.
Yeah.
When I went on that homecoming, I knew who was coming. I knew Tami was going to be there. I knew David was going to be there. I knew that they were going to have 2 of our 8 episodes about that whole hallway thing. I knew that everybody was going to be, using the foulest language possible. I work at a church. I'm a pastor of the gospel of Christ. Okay. And so I'm going to be careful about what I surround myself in. Now, if you've watched the New Orleans homecoming, when they first told me New Orleans was going to be the next homecoming, I thought, I like all those people. Like, they're friends of mine. I like every single one of those people. Actually, it's going to be kind of boring. What are they going to do? They're not going to fight about anything. And oh my goodness, Julie is a very good friend of mine. But you see Kelly remove herself completely from all of the antics. Let me just tell you something. Matt from the New Orleans show is a very good friend. All of them are I talk to all of them. And Kelly, I know probably the least, but I've messaged her back and forth and just said, "Hey, I can relate." Because when things got crazy and stupid on your show, you removed yourself. And people online called you boring. And people online were like, "Oh, she's not producing." It's like, let me tell you something. She's a real person that has a real life she's going back to. She's not there to look like an idiot for your entertainment. And that's where I was. And if you want to go back to the New York season, they had 6 episodes and 3 of them were about Becky and Kevin fighting about race. I didn't want to watch that. I wanted Heather B to make me laugh. I wanted to know about Julie's family in Alabama. I wanted to know what Eric Nice is up to. I didn't want to sit and watch Norman, who's a very good friend of mine. I'm going to actually see him next week, actually this week at Rachel Duffy's daughter's wedding. And so it's going to be, you want a real world reunion? You should be with Norman and Rachel and I this coming weekend.
I liked Norm. I thought he was great on I thought he was great on the homecoming.
Yeah.
Because these little nuggets, like he was saying he was struggling after the pandemic with some of the work experience. And like, that's not anything that anyone puts out in public a lot. And the way the roommates, bonded together, I think that's what it is. So like, if you want to use the blanket word as a boring, that's going to be a tough word to get around because boring is such a polarizing word. But I think what it is part of it is the genre itself. I've often said that, once the shows went to Las Vegas this season, the Real World kind of went away. It was still an interesting show.
I mean, they're in the jacuzzi having sex before the other roommates show up to move in.
And it doesn't say that stuff can't happen on a season, but like that's the only thing that they're showing. I've often said outside of like the DC season, all of those newer seasons weren't that much storytelling. And the DC season of the later seasons was the only one that I really, really liked. Because it sort of went back to that. So to your point, let's get to it. No, it's basically like I could always have love and adoration because I think Tami's a great reality star and I've watched so much of her other shows. So that's just where that is. But the context too is the concept of New Orleans. What I liked about it is all of the cast members like equally distributed because there wasn't anyone who was known as, like the big Tami Roman name. So I think you guys on some level had a little bit of a challenge because it may not be easy to film with her experience, and you knew her from all those years ago, and she could be a bit of a dominating personality. So that did make it difficult. The other thing that made it difficult with you guys was what each person had to well, no, but you got to hear me. What each person had to lose.
I'm hearing
because if Tami's in reality and reality only, acting and music and all these things, she could just keep pushing because it's all great for her work in the industry. You can't really push as far as you want to go because maybe the concept of the job and, we're starting to see that. We saw that in New Orleans. A lot of people didn't want to get as messy as they would have got in their 20s. And that's, of course, understandable. Right. Yeah.
Well,
my critique, last word, John. My critique with LA was as a viewer, I wish it would have been distributed more. So that doesn't say anything to John. That doesn't say anything to Tami. That's just when we got the edit, we got so much of her, and we didn't get a lot of everybody. There was times where I wanted to know more about, like, well, how does John feel about this? And John, the hardest thing probably for us as a viewer to watch from you was when there was a lot of questioning, or, you know, sort of prying too much into your personal business, which I guess they have every right to do, in terms of they knew you as a virginal 18-year-old, and that sort of became this tougher storyline. Was there anything that you felt painful about going through that experience, or did you love the way you handled it, or were you a little embarrassed by the situation, or wish it didn't show up on television? How'd you feel about that?
What I felt was that was the first night, and what I felt was, honestly, I felt like that there was a lot of vulgarity involved in the conversation, which I'm not going to use certain language, and I don't really want to be on television around people using certain language. If they really wanted to know if I had remained sexually pure, then they could have asked me that differently. But what I really felt strange about was that I didn't ask any of them about their sexual experiences for the last 30 years. I didn't look at Tami and say, which I felt like I could have. After, well, Tami, before I answer your question, you tell me about all the sex you've had for 30 years in detail with every partner and location, and then I'll tell you about mine. I didn't do that. And the reason I didn't do that is because I afforded her respect that she did not afford me. And then TMZ wants to put it on there that John's 47-year-old, 48-year-old virgin, and they tweeted it out. So I tweeted them back. I said, why don't you have me on your show? I'd love to talk to you about why I've remained sexually pure, because of my ministry and because of the Lord's instructions in Scripture. You don't want to talk about that, TMZ.
Yeah,
they just want to talk about.
See, that's where the Real World Homecoming should have given us more, because right now you're sticking to it. And it's like it's like we only saw the side of them getting on you and getting in your case, but you really didn't get to be afforded a rebuttal.
No, and like I said, they had it mapped out how they wanted the episodes to go, and they all revolved around Tami. And so when the producers, not even of the production company, but when the producers of the network, okay, not even Paramount, but higher than Paramount at Viacom, say this, Tami's going to be the star, and Tami's going to be the voice, and Tami's going to be the one that comes across looking good and has the mic all the time, then no matter what you say and do, you really don't get to have your point across. And that's how reality TV is different now. I mean, Julie on the New Orleans show, who I'm very good friends with and talk to very often, she may not say this, but I'm going to say it for her. She felt pressure to produce, to not have a boring season. Well, to the point where, there were times that she said and did things she wished she hadn't said and done. It made all the other roommates very uncomfortable, to the point where Kelly goes, I'm leaving. And Jamie goes, wish she hadn't have said that. Should I leave the Matt, I actually called into the show. The producers called me and said, John, do you know Matt Smith? I said, yes, I do very well. And would you call him? Because he's about to leave the show. And we think,
oh, I didn't know that. We see that moment where he talks to a producer on one of the episodes, but not to the point where he was ready to walk.
They called me and said, would you, as a fellow Christian, talk to Matt about why he should stay? I called him on FaceTime, and the camera crews are there. They have the footage. They just chose not to use it, of John from Season Los Angeles. He was ready to go.
John, can you repeat that, because we lost you a little?
Yeah. So they have footage of me on FaceTime calling Matt while he's at the New Orleans homecoming, just telling him, hey, Matt, you need to stay there, man. You're the conservative voice. You're the Christian voice with this side of morals. You can't leave. Don't you leave. Then there's nobody with your point of view. And so they had that footage they could have used. I called back again. Because Julie on the first homecoming, she's like, screw she said, F every other season except for New York in the real world. We were first. We're in the best city. Forget all you guys. And we're like, So then we saw that. So when we got in the confessional, we did this big, oh, New York, you suck, and we're the best. And
Yeah.
Eric Meese wasn't even at your homecoming; he was at ours, And so,
Yeah,
I mean, we're talking smack. So they wanted to keep the rivalry going. So they had me
Mhm.
call again and talk to the cast on speakerphone. And I'm like, yeah, your all's homecoming's probably boring because everybody's so nice, and you guys probably didn't fuss or fight at all. And they're like, oh, wait till you see the show. And
Yeah, it
then
was
they all,
unbelievable,
oh,
unbelievable
I
season.
mean, it was unbelievable. And I love the cast members, and I love the producers, and I love the show. To be honest, I'm not bashing
Mm,
something I was fabricated, fabricated
mhm.
reality TV. I'm sorry, New Orleans. I know you're up for some awards. Go win them, whatever. Because I'm a real world proponent. I want to,
Mm,
I like the project. I like being part of it. I would do it again right now. The phone rang. They said homecoming or real world experience. We want John Brennan. I'd be there. I wouldn't even have to think about it. So I'm a proponent of it. I love it. I'm a supporter. But the New Orleans homecoming was fabricated. It was not real. And when Becky from the New York season grabbed her suitcase and said, I'm leaving your reality show. This is not real life. At the time when I watched it before our homecoming, I was like, "Come on, Becky, don't leave. What are you doing? What do you mean it's not real? You're the OG. You're a pioneer of reality TV. You know what this is." I can relate. I know exactly. I even sent her a DM and I said, I didn't realize it at the time, but I fully support you. I know exactly what you meant, and I support you. And it's a totally different experience now than we were on. It not even resembles the same.